All right, there we go. So, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Katie Stroud. I am the founder of Elikonas, and I'll get into that in just a minute. I want to introduce my co-host here, Thomas Jacobs. He's local in the area here. He's going to be working with me to help build what we're trying to build here. I have a couple of friends here. We've got Craig Seibert, Trisha Ransom, Wendy Arnon, all people that I've worked with on some capacity or another, even in the conference circles, meeting up at those things, which I hope to see you guys again soon. I'm going to be looking for submitting to the next conference and trying to join you guys if you're going to be at any of those. My mom is here, Fermina. That's what it says on her name here, but it's she likes to go by Fermi, I know. So um, good story there. She kind of fits into my story, my college story, which I'm going to be sharing here today. And Wendy, I worked with Wendy in the New York office. So thank you all so much for coming here today. We hope to get more people, more awareness, more people joining us in the future. And I look forward to seeing you there. All right, for anyone who understands Zoom, is there a way to pin the person who is speaking up? Let me see.
Army's saying that she can't hear you. Yeah.
Oh, you can't hear me, Mom? Well, yeah, she's connecting to audio. There might be an issue with that. Oh, my chat wasn't open. Let me just send her a message. Let her know that she can test that.
And you can highlight people, which will make them first. Or if they're in speaker view, then it'll just show them up in front. Um, and if you make me co-host, I can handle that.
Okay. How did I do that? All right. Okay. All right. Before we kick off, I just want to share some exciting news. I got accepted into the Peach Score Accelerator program. What is that? It's a program for startups, entrepreneurs like myself with what I'm trying to build here, and it helps to fast track the people in its cohort to get funding in order to build and scale at speed. To figure out how to talk to investors and get the money you need to kind of build things. So I've been talking a lot about with some people about what Elikonas is, and it's more about what it's going to be. I'm still working on building that, but until then, I've kicked off this series because I want to share. I want people to share their college stories. A lot of people. Let me start with a quick story. I posted on Facebook, what's your college story? Just kind of thought I'd throw it out there and see what response I got. And I got a handful. I did it in a few places, and I've got enough people that want to share their story. But the interesting thing is that one of the people that responded was somebody who was in our own HOA group here, and I met with her for lunch, and she said that she wasn't going to share, but the more that she saw other people sharing their stories and that it wasn't the traditional college route, that everybody kind of meandered and took different ways, then she went ahead and shared her story. So I talked to her about maybe being one of the people to share in a future episode, which is what I want to do. I want to get ordinary people, everyone that's had some experience, and whether or not that was in an actual traditional college or whether it was an alternate route, that's what we're talking about today. And more often than not, people that have gone to college have maybe taken an alternate route. which is what I did. Um, so any questions, any comments, any thoughts or ideas before I jump in? All right. So let me tell you my story. So my mom had to jump off. She had some issues with her audio, but the way that oops, sorry, excuse me, I was just responding to a chat. So my mom grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was one of 9 kids. Um, most all of them except for the youngest didn't even graduate high school and much less even thinking about college. um, Shortly after I was born, she moved away. She married a man in the Air Force, and we kind of moved around a little and settled in the Pacific Northwest, and that's where I grew up. So I didn't grow up in the space where my mom was raised, and she had always pushed, go to school, do good in school, like go to college. We all understood that that was kind of like, if you want to make a living, that's what you need to do. But we also watched her make a living. Even though she struggled a lot, we all saw that, like, we had food on the table most of the time and we had a roof over our head. Um, so there was a little bit of messages. Go to school, but you can make it if you don't. I always thought I was college bound. Come senior year, I ended up pregnant, and I had a baby, and suddenly all those ideas about going to college, all those fears and um, the ideas that you have in your head, it built up this sort of, college is for other people. It's not for people like us, people who struggle in life, people who've had a kid in high school. And what I did was what a lot of us do when we grow up in those kind of situations is I went on to survive. College was a luxury, an extra thing, something that I didn't think I had time for. And it took about 5 years. I did some odd jobs, and I was working at HP in Vancouver. Hewlett Packard built printers there, and a bunch of people got laid off. And the people who actually worked for the company, I was just a vendor, so I didn't actually work for the company, but the ones that did, that I had friends with, they got um they got funding to go to school and whatnot have you. And I was talking to a friend one day, and he was talking about the classes that he signed up for, and I just looked at him and said, "Well, how did you get into that school?" Now, mind you, this was a community college, right? So it's really silly, but the answer he gave me just kind of rubbed it in a little. Like, I went to the admissions office and I applied, and I thought, "Oh, oh, it's that easy, right? That's that's what you do. You go and you fill out some paperwork and you get in." And that's what I did. And I started at the community college. I started taking classes. And the thing about school is I was one of those weird ones that actually liked going to school. It was interesting to learn things, and I liked being in the classes when I could. Being a single mom, it wasn't always possible, but that was the thing with college. It was a little more flexible than what high school was. So, so I did that. I had to quit about midway to get back to work. I needed to make ends meet, and I didn't really have like the childcare options and stuff that I needed for my baby. Um, and then and then something interesting happened, and he started kindergarten. And the thing about that was that it gave me the ability to at least be taking classes at the same time that he was in classes. And then it got even easier when he was in the first grade. And so I pushed through, and I finally got my it was an AAS. Um, what does the A stand for in that? I just
It's
blanked.
Associate of Arts and Sciences.
Associate of Arts and Scientists. Thank you, Tim.
Mhm.
So so I got that, and then I thought, well, that was easier than I thought it was, for me, being someone who enjoyed school. So I looked at next steps. Well, I could go all the way and get a bachelor's degree. And how am I going to do that? The school I went to was only a 2-year degree, so I had to apply elsewhere. And the state of Washington had a transfer program that, even though my GPA was, I don't know, it was like a 2.8 or something, um, I was able to still get into the University of Washington, which is actually listed in the top 50 colleges. It's one of the more prestigious ones, and I got in, but I got lucky, and I went through. It took me about another 3 more years to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and finally get that degree. And it was it was an accomplishment. It was something that I felt like in high school they're always telling you you should go to college, and I thought it was just something that you check off the list. It wasn't until years later that I realized just how big of an accomplishment that really was, because I was the first person in a long line of generations that had ever gone to college and completed it. Um, I say that I don't want to discount. My mom did do some schooling. She got an accounting certificate, and I think she did some art classes and stuff. But I was the first person in generations to earn a 4-year degree. And I felt pretty proud of that. And then I started looking at it a little bit more closely, and I realized that it's not that the people that I come from, the culture that I come from, um, it's not that they didn't want to go to school or that they couldn't. It's not even about cost, because there's grants and things that you can apply for. And yet all of those other options involve things like getting good grades and being committed to being in class and going to school. Well, these people that I come from, they're working, they have families to raise, they have to survive. A lot of them face certain challenges in life that you find in impoverished communities where maybe there's abuse cycles that are around. It's a rough part of town, and sometimes you're careful just going to the store. And when you have things like that you're dealing with in life, you're not looking at trying to commit to sitting in a classroom and learning about psychology or history or something. You're just trying to learn how to survive on a day-to-day basis. So that sort of built into some other things that I was thinking about. I was in all the conferences that I go to. I did a lot of learning and development conferences, and what you find in those circles is that a lot of people have offerings to teach about leadership, about software, about how to develop training. Um, and all of them are doing all the marketing and all the things that you need to do to make that available to people. Um, and no one that I know of, I mean, there's a few platforms out there, but there's not like a central place for all those to go where people interested in those things are going to go looking for them. So that combined with my history in college, I started to think there's got to be a better way to match up the people that want to learn things and the people that have things to teach. And that's when I started to think about this idea of a platform and a different way to do college. So to talk a little bit about what Elikonas will be as I'm building it, is we're looking at a platform that is it's kind of like a design your own degree program. Let's say you want to do something, anything at all. Anyone here that always wanted to do something that they're either not doing or are doing and enjoy? You can hear me, Mom? We still can't hear you. That's okay. You can type it in the chat too if you like. There's a chat button down below. Well, anyway, so what you do is you decide what are you going to do, and then you can go and figure out what steps, what do you need to learn to get there. And you don't necessarily have to do it in a classroom. But there, and it doesn't have to be a classroom experiences. This is another thing that I'm trying to break the mindset of, that learning happens in a classroom. There's a lot of different ways to learn things. I was just talking to my daughter yesterday about shop class, and she's doing pottery, and I was like, "Oh, I made a bowl in shop class." She's like, "What? Like on a pottery wheel in middle school?" Because they don't have that. They don't have those things these days, those offerings. And so I told her all about shop class and how much I enjoyed like going and making things. We had these assignments. I made a mirror, like an acid sketched mirror. I did pottery. Um, and that was really fun. It wasn't sitting in a classroom. I mean, it was kind of a classroom, but it was kind of like you went in and you picked something to work on, and teacher would come by and help you with that. And that's more of a hands-on type of learning that some people are just more suited to. Those people that would do trade jobs like being an electrician or a plumber, welder, anything like that doesn't happen in a classroom. You need to be able to cut wires and work with pipes and whatever else the trade might ask for. Uh, and it doesn't stop there. There's other ways to learn things beyond that, right? Like a community project that happens. The lady that I talked to from our HOA group, she's taken on, like, she's our secretary of the group, and so she's been working with the Parks and Recreation Department in the area to bring salmon back to one of the small little streams that we have running through the area. And she really enjoys that. And that's kind of a project where she's learning a lot. She's learning about what the salmon need, and the sort of right of ways that go through different, like our stream cuts through a private property that's closer to the inlet from the bay that's close to us. And I mean, there's just a lot of things in there that she learned, and why can't that count uh toward your path, your journey in life into doing something better for yourself and frankly for the world? We need people doing things like plumbing and building roads and bringing salmon back to our neighborhoods and such. And that's what I'm trying to do with Elikonas, is to make it easier for people. It's also incredibly flexible. It doesn't have to be a 4-year program. But there will be a way to like set goals and try to achieve those. But with the kind of people that are looking for alternatives, um, they they have a life to survive, and so we want to make it as flexible as possible for anyone. And I do mean anyone. I'm talking third world countries. How can we help them to learn things to help their own communities? So that's kind of my story, my college story, and how it sort of led to what I'm trying to build today. I'm going to pause there for a minute to see if anyone has things to say or questions. Craig, I see that you're typing in there. You didn't get shop class until high school. That's awesome. I got it in middle school, so nah, 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 nah. Um, and you had to move out of rural Ohio. I see. So, yeah, and right, exactly, for a trade job, it doesn't take 4 years to learn how to weld something. All right, it takes some practice and working with someone who's good at it to do that. Mom, you had shop class in high school. Did you take that? What did you do? She's typing, but Wendy has a question here. Oh, you worked with wood. I love working with wood. I love building things. Wendy has a question here. How do you envision companies to accept these alternative learning platforms? And that's a very good question because I put a lot of thought into it. I am looking to find a way to make that acceptable, to accredit it in some way. Working the last 5 years, I've been working at a company called IAB Tech Lab. Wendy, you're familiar with that, but we work a lot with standards. And the that experience is going to fuel me in finding ways to work with the standards of accreditation. Right now, I've seen schools, I've seen the process that schools go through. My son's in a private school and they kind of share a report on the accreditation process that happens. I also did an internship when I was doing college for one of those processes that um, and I think what we need to do is to reimagine what accreditation means in this sense. So it is going to be working with accreditation companies that accredit the schools, the colleges. And I think what it will look like in Elikonas is that there'll be accredited courses and non-accredited courses. There'll be an accredited process. Like let's say the person in my neighborhood is trying to bring salmon back to our stream. Uh, there's maybe a process that she works out. Like how does what does she want to showcase that she learned, right? How would she do that? And maybe there's a way to like list those things and accredit the fact that she learned these things doing this work to get there. So so that's something that I'm putting a lot of thought to. The other thing is that once we get into this and we get enough users, I want to hold graduation ceremonies, like cap and gown, the whole gamut. And graduation from what? A 4 year degree? We're looking at flexibility. So what that looks like is whatever you planned to achieve in your setup, that becomes graduation for you, that you've achieved a goal and you wear your cap and gown to achieve that diploma, that certificate, whatever it is that we call that. And you get a badge in Elikonas. You get and that's the other thing. So with Elikonas, it's also a social platform. So for those of you that used LinkedIn, it might look something like that, where you're building a network of people to talk to throughout the process to give you advice and encouragement along the way. And also you can share. You can share what you've learned and your process for learning that and any kind of like achievement badge as well. Mom, I just saw that you also took pottery. I know that you did a lot of ceramics when I was little. A lot of painting stuff. So Trisha, I'm just seeing your comment here. You grew up in a university town and your dad was a professor. That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, professor of electrical engineering, a professor and a dean.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
I've heard a thing or two about the parentals.
the parentals, yes.
Yeah, but I didn't know that he was a college professor.
Yeah,
Um, and Tom, so Tom, I brought Tom in today. Again, he's helping me with some of the early stuff in Alcona's here, but I also wanted to invite him to share what he did. I know he has a military background, so Tom, please let us hear your story.
Okay, great. Let's see. I'm going to replace the spotlight really quickly. So, hi, I'm Tom Jacobs, and I took a circuitous route through my education. Started with community college, and uh, at 17, didn't do so great, so I joined the military so that I could use the GI Bill for my uh, my undergrad, but I also used a lot of CLEP courses. I tested out of a lot of credits and then used the GI Bill um, to get my master's. So I finished my undergrad while I was in the Navy. The Navy paid for it, and then I used the GI Bill to pay for my MBA. And so that's how I kind of went through that route. And since then, I'm a big fan of alternative paths to education, and I've built um, quite a few um, programs. I built four in Washington State to help students get into IT work. And at the high school level, that translates either directly into work or gets accredited at uh, in some of our community colleges, and um, also working towards one with associates, not associates degree, uh, with university. So that's a lot of my path, a lot of ed tech. That's how Katie and I got to know each other.
Really, it was through
And so
Toastmasters.
we through Toastmasters, and I
We were
found
in
another
Toastmasters
instructional
together.
yeah, we were in Toastmasters together, and there's another instructional designer that I could talk to.
Right, right.
Yeah, and that was yeah, that's kind of it. But yeah, my big passion is getting people from uh, through alternate pathways to get into um, valuable work through whatever means that is, and education as the catalyst. So it's great working with Katie on this project.
Thanks, Tom. And I saw your comment
Mhm.
that you worked with several colleges to for specific curriculum accreditation. So
Mhm.
that's good to have those connections.
Mhm.
I wanted to start. Well, I think accreditation is going to come just a little bit later. We want to build a product and build an audience, and
Mhm.
from there go to accreditation. So it's not top of the list, but it's
Mhm.
definitely a heavy to do, something that I want to get in there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Um, Trisha, I since you mentioned that your dad was a college professor,
Yes.
I'm curious what your college story was.
Oh, yeah. So I was just typing it. It was not straightforward. I
Of course not.
Of course not. I had gone to a special school for smart kids, University Town, you could do that. So I'd skipped a grade, but stayed an extra year. Anyhow, I graduated from high school at 17. Should have listened to my mother and gone to community college. Did not. Went straight to the University of Illinois. That's where my dad worked. And met a guy, dropped out, and I did not get my college degree until I was 30. So I worked around town. My parents are very well known. I worked around town in other jobs for those 10 plus years, which was very interesting. But one day I was working as a bank teller, and I was like, I'm done. It was October of 1992, and by January of 1993, I was down at Southern Illinois University, and that's where I actually got my degree from. One day, I just said, "I'm done. I'm through. I'm going to go back to college," and it was different when I went back because one, I was paying for it, and two, I knew why I was going to college. It's
Yes.
different when you're an adult. When you know why you're going rather than just going because you're expected to go. And so then I did that, ended up in instructional design. None of us ended up here directly. And then one day I was like, I think I'm going to get a master's degree in this. And that's what I did. And so here I am. But nothing straightforward, nothing the way it should have been on paper, looking at my life and my parents and the way I grew up.
Yeah. That's interesting. You bring up a couple of things. The first is the way it should have been done, right? That's another
Uh-huh.
thing I'm trying to shatter, right? Like the way it should have been. And the other thing is that whole should have been, right, is a bunch of people that feel like they're supposed to go to college right out of high school. Like how many of us really know what we want to do in life at that point? Um, it's funny when
Yeah.
I was a kid, people would tell me that I was really good at writing, but when I said I wanted to be a writer, they said, "Oh, no, you can't be a writer. You won't make any money." So I went to college trying to do other things, and I'm like, okay, what's going to make me the most money? And I looked up electrical engineering, kind of like fell on the list. I
That's what
did a
my
bunch
dad
of
did.
classes along that path before I realized like I needed to graduate and I needed some easier classes to get a good grade, like a good GPA. I
And
can't
that's
remember what.
actually, and that's how I got my bachelor's degree. When I went back to college, it wasn't what did I want? It was like, what do I have the most credits in and what's easiest for me? So
What's
that's how
easiest for
I
me,
got a
right?
degree in English literature because I just needed the degree. It didn't matter what it was in at that point. I just needed the degree. And it's the weirdest thing, I never thought when I was 17 that I'd have a degree in English literature. I
Right,
just
right. You
didn't.
never thought that, right? And
Oh,
that's what I thought too. Like, well, why would I take like writing classes? They're so easy. And later, when people were paying me a bunch of money to do writing for them, I realized that it was easy for me, not necessarily easy,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that's what I learned too. But what I've learned as I've gotten older, and like you, Katie, I ask people a lot of questions. How did you end up in this field, or what did you go to school for, or whatever? And nobody's story is ever. I graduated. I went 4 years. I did this. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people did it the way they were supposed to in the field that they were supposed to. And I just find that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm trying to build with Elikonas is that you can
Mhm.
take your time. You can take detours if you need to. You can come back to it later. And that's what I'm trying to build. I'm really excited to maybe bring Craig in if he's interested. He said he just realized listening to everyone that his story is longer than what he thought it was.
I mean, I can take a shot, but like I said, it's definitely going to be a weird one. So I think it fits though with exactly what you're talking about, with the idea that, and are we PG or are we G rated? Should can I?
Hey, go for
So
it. Just speak
my
your
dad
mind.
used a phrase. My dad used a phrase pretty much the entire time I was growing up of get an education so you don't have to bust your ass like I did. He's
Perfect.
literally said that to me over and over and over again. And like you said, that was the mentality was when you graduated high school, you went to college.
Hmm.
I did graduate in top 10% of my class, so I had my associate's degree pretty much paid for if I wanted to do it. I took a year off, went to um, the local community college, got my 2 year degree in electronics technology or engineering. So I have an associate's in engineering in that and went to school initially for computers. So I started a university in Florida, USF, and got 2 years into it and hated it. I just hated the whole process of trying to learn things for it. I think it was only about a year in, actually. Took 2 years off and went back for art. So I went back for a bachelor's in fine arts after, an electronics engineering associates, and I went for computers as a start, and I took out way too many loans. So that's another story complete. That should definitely be something that you should, you know, work in your system, as money is really the big thing for it. I kind of, it hurt me to have to take those loans out and do that throughout the years. But back on track, I finished as with an associate or a bachelor's degree in fine arts. Loved college, loved doing it. But I think what I got more out of college was the responsibilities and the mindset to learn more than I got the education. Like the stuff that I learned, you know, I could have technically went out and found out on my own. I mean, it was a lot of art history. It was a lot of photography history. It was a lot of, painting. But I also worked in a studio, so I had that hands-on. I actually had a painting studio where I painted and presented my works for review and stuff. So, but I think again, I the more important thing I got from school, I think, was going and being responsible for going and going with different timelines instead of getting up at 7 and coming home at 3. I had to set my own schedules. I had to figure out what, when classes were. I had to figure out when I had to be on campus and when I had to leave campus and if I could get a parking spot. And I think those things were almost more just as important to me as the education that I got. So when you asked me to do this, when you asked me to come in and talk about I had a lot of flashbacks to what I went through and going to college. But I think again, if I would have been going for the things I wanted to do. I'm in a, I got into training via an instructional designer developer because I was a graphic designer. I knew how to use all the tools for graphic design, which led into being able to use all the tools for instructional design. So I got into it that way, but I wanted to teach. That's what I've always wanted to do was teach people and convey knowledge from one person to the next and from me to the people in the classroom. So I think if I would have known what that was initially, and if I would have been more focused on the things that I really wanted to do going forward, I think like your program would kind of help somebody to do that a little bit better. So I shortened a lot. I shortened the whole story a lot, but I think the important parts were I'm right in line with what you're talking about. I really was pushed into it and forced into it. I made the best of it. I had kind of the classic bohemian college experience where I got to, go paint at 2 o'clock in the morning in my studio and go to a class 5 hours later. But it was, I think the benefit was more the structure and learning how to be structured in that world than it was more the education.
Right. You you bring up debt, and also the meandering path and that you took to finally realize what it was that you loved, and that was to teach people, right? So many of us do that. Like there are people that go through that. I know someone who did the 4 years of college and then took a job and went on to do that. But like Trisha says, like very few people actually do that, and that's why. It's because they don't have that. They're doing what they're supposed to do. My kids were homeschooled their first few years, and then they were in a private school. And then my daughter, my oldest, she started high school, and she came to me one day and she says, "Mom, everybody in school is so depressed. They walk around like zombies, and I think I know why." I said, "Why?" She says, "They're all doing what they're supposed to do. Nobody's giving them the space to go and figure out what they want to do. And it's so sad, Mama. It's so sad." And she, like, I don't exaggerate. She talked to me just like that. And I said, "Well, let's do something about that." And so that's interesting. And then back to the debt thing. 2 years ago, I got my debt forgiven because of the fact that I had been paying on it for 20 years. Apparently, that's a thing after you've been paying. If you've been paying, you've been in good standing that those whole 20 years. They forgive the rest of it, and I had to be forgiven because it wasn't paid off in 20 years. Like people are going into debt to do something and get a job that doesn't necessarily pay that debt off. And even if you do something that gets you a good job, that maybe you could pay that off, you get things in the economy like recently with the AI stuff. People are losing their jobs left and right and not having any options to go from there. And what's with that debt now? I mean, you can't look that far in the future and see what's going to come up with that. Um, and my mom, she posted a question. She said, "Really, I could go and get a cap and gown and do that?" And I was just telling her yesterday that she could be a case study because she wanted to learn something. She didn't know what. She's like, "But I can't even, sit at my desk for 20 minutes." I'm like, "Well, that's the beauty of this all. It's at your own pace doing what you can when you can." And yes, Mom, we can get you in a cap and gown eventually. It's gonna take a few years, so keep yourself
It's
healthy.
interesting too. I just saw that note too, and she's got the almost the same line my dad says. Why it's important for all my children to have an education. That's
Yeah,
really weird that maybe it's a generational thing that
yeah.
really wanted their kids to
When you
have that
said that, I was
education.
gonna I was gonna jump in and say my mom had similar sayings. Catalina, she would say. Um, well, we still have a little time here, and I'm interested to hear Wendy's story if you're interested in sharing with us.
Well, I could go on for a long time, so I won't that long. But I imagine being in high school, the beginning of your senior year, not liking high school. All your friends graduated the year before, because I was friends with a lot of people who were the year above me. And I found out that I could actually graduate 6 months early because I had enough credits. And I was very excited, but I didn't have a good GPA. So I ended up just applying to local schools. And I also didn't have any money. Um, so I ended up applying to local schools and went to a private school that accepted me, the only one really, other than I didn't even apply to the community college. It was expected that I would go to college. My mother um, is 99 years old. She just turned 99.
Congratulations.
She started college when she was 16, one of the few women who went to college. And she has two master's degrees. She's a teacher, special ed teacher, and a dietitian. And she just expected us to go to college, but we didn't have the money. Um, so I ended up starting there, not knowing what I was going to do. the same thing, but I wanted to continue on and went into debt. But in my, I guess, junior year, my psychology professor said to me, because I was a psych soc major, unless you have your PhD, you'll never get a job in this field. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do? I have to have my major. And my mother talked me into becoming an education major, which is what she was. So I ended up graduating college as an education major, taught 6 months at the United Nations preschool, decided I really didn't want to teach young kids. I was already telling my friends that their shoelaces were untied, and ended up going to work in Ogilvy in the accounting job, in the job from hell. So I will say it took me a long time to pay off that debt. And I ended up leaving there those were the years you had to spend a year on a job in order to move on, right? That's what everyone told you. Don't
Right.
leave a job before a year because that's the best thing to do. So 6 months teacher, year and a half accounting, and ended up as an assistant at an ad agency in media for my next job. So 3 careers out of the gate in 2 years. And I was just determined to stay somewhere for some length of time, past a year, so I can continue on. And then the story goes from there. But my mother was, expect us to go to college, but she couldn't afford it because my father passed away when I was 14. So she was left with no money, but you're still expected to go. So I think that's really the story.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of things there too that trigger some other things that come up, and that is how you ended up in marketing, right?
Yeah.
So I out of college I got a job at an ad tech company, and it's not a job that people say when I want to grow up I want to serve ads to people, uh, and figure out all the technology for that. But that's the kind of thing that happens when you get out there and you try to get a job. You end up in places you just never thought you were going to end up.
Yep.
And this brings me to a third piece of Elikonas that I hadn't brought up before, was that companies that I was working at IAB before, long before you were there, not long before, but I'd been there for a while. And they had started this program where companies had these skills gaps. All these ad tech companies had a lack of people they could hire because there was no school program for it. There was no set of courses
Mm-hmm.
people understood. You didn't go to school to learn how to serve ads and run
Right.
campaigns and stuff. You would go to school for marketing, like how to get the message, how to create the message, and the channels for doing that, which in our day was like magazines and TVs and stuff. Um, but in the age of the internet, as it popped up, early 2000, well, 90s, but more so after the turn of the century, the opportunities for making money in ad tech just exploded. But nobody knew how to do it. You learned on the job. I got the job as a tech writer, trying to explain it to people, which then led into L&D, and that's kind of another thing that happens. So it's interesting that you're pushed to go and spend these 4 years doing a program that doesn't necessarily fill what you end up doing. So I think it's another opportunity, and this leads to that third piece of Eliconis that I wasn't talking about, is a corporate portal. So corporations that feel like there's a skills gap in their employees, they can have a corporate portal. We call these LMSs, learning management systems. But it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to say better, because um, the corporation can provide either their own set of courses that they like, or they can pull in from the learning marketplace that Eliconis will be building. Um, they can say, if you want to get promoted to this job, or you want to move over to this job, these are kind of the skills that you need to take, and these are the classes we recommend, or like go find those classes. And then the last piece of that is that even if you learn something while you're in a corporate portal, it still carries with you if you move on to another job somewhere. So all of those things, and it's good for the corporation. I've heard people say, well, great, we're training our employees to leave us, but they leave you with a piece of your brand because that brand stays in the profile. So, and if you're providing this kind of opportunity for your employees, that's a good thing. That's a reason to stick around. But anyway, so yeah, corporate portals is another piece of it that actually working at IAB, I realized, wow, yeah, at one point I thought I would build a whole like ad tech university and offer the classes that people needed for those companies. And I did build some training for IAB. Um, but but I did other things, so I didn't do the whole university thing like I thought I might. Um, well, excellent. Mom, do you have anything to add towards the end here about your experiences? She says, wait a minute. Still can't hear her. That's okay. Uh, I will share that so my mom grew up, as I mentioned, one of 9 kids, and she had to quit high school early because she needed to be home helping with all her little brothers and sisters. So that made it really difficult for her as well. And this is just the kind of person that we're trying to support. I mean, there's a lot of people. There's I mentioned earlier that hold on just a minute. It's been really windy today. It's drying out the air and throwing pollen everywhere. Um, the people that are losing jobs and don't know what to do now. Um, I'm hoping to help as many of those people as we can as well. People that are trying to do some kind of a career pivot or fill any gaps that they might have to take on other jobs. So so my mom, I'll tell the story. She's having trouble with her audio, but she she went through an accounting program learning how to handle budgets and a company's um numbers. And she got this job, which the minimum wage at that time was 3 something. And she got this job in this office that was $8 an hour, which at the time that was like, whoa, that was almost double what people that like her family was making, right? Um, but she worked in this office. I remember the office. It was a bit dingy and full of just like stacks of paperwork. It looked like your typical cartoon where there's just stacks of papers everywhere, um and the person the boss that she worked with to manage stuff. It was what she realized with that job was that she's not a sit at your desk kind of a person, I think. Um, and she didn't stay in accounting much longer. She went on to do other things. She worked at a company that making microchips for Kyocera. Yeah, yeah, I remember that boss was a bit dirty. There was a scent when you walked into that office. Um, but anyway, again, we've got just a few minutes here. I want to close out and say thank you everyone for coming. So next week I'm gonna be out of town. I'm going to Jamaica. Just kind of taking a vacation before I jump into this accelerator program that just kicked off. I'm going to be doing some practicing pitches and, going to investors and looking at getting this product built. What that means is that we're going to see a product release sometime this year. I'm hoping fall is the goal that I'm setting. It is something that I can build, that Tom can help build. AI is so incredibly complex these days that it can and does build entire apps in minutes. This platform is going to be a little bit more complicated than a simple app, but and there's a lot of features we want to get in there, but we will see a release this year, and we will see um, taking on a handful of people to work directly with to really figure out the usefulness of it all and spread that across the world eventually. Um, I'm so glad that all of you could share your stories. The beautiful thing about that is, like I said with my Facebook post, that the more people started to post, the more people wanted to share. And that's what I'm hoping to do with this series. So week after next, I'm gonna find a time that seems to fit more schedules. It's gonna be about 30 minutes, and it's gonna be more specific to like a guest that we'll have on to share their stories. And hopefully there's still enough time with some of that to bring people in from the audience to share a thing or two. And so that's where we're going. I'm going to post this recording on YouTube. Elikonas has a YouTube channel. It doesn't have anything on it yet, but we'll start building up some content for people to check out. Thanks all again. And if you have signed up on my site, elikonas.com, you'll get the email for future invites, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you so much. This is super great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Trisha,
Yeah.
Craig, Mom,
Thank you.
even, and Tom for helping out with.
You.
It was good to see you all. We'll see you
Thank you.
see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.